Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Erica.
And we're all dolled up today, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We've got our jewels and we've got our boa here.
Right. And we are here to show a new pattern by AccuQuilt called the Gems and Jewels Quilt.
That's right. And I love this new quilt.
Right, and this is a very simple design. It's just a repetitive block, and this is the block that we're going to show you today. And the really great thing about it is that you can make this with your 9-inch cube with just 2 dies out of it.
That's right. Or if you want to make the blocks a different size, you could use a different cube and still use the same 2 numbered dies.
So easy.
Yes.
And also, like with the fabrics that here, what they've used is it's a fat quarter bundle, right?
Right. Right.
And by Robert Kaufman. And so you could do that and make this really interesting design, or you could make it two-tone if you want to do that.
Right. You could make it a different look, and I actually really love this fabric. I had the same fabric bundle and am making a completely different quilt out of it. So love our Robert Kaufman.
And I'm thinking about making this quilt for, I have a friend in my life that's having a baby, so I think this will be a great baby quilt.
Great baby quilt.
Okay, so should we get started with the cutting?
Do.
All right. So the 2 dies that you need out of your 9-inch cube are number 2 and number 3.
Right.
Okay, and so what I'm going to do, we've got the Go Big today. I'm going to show you how to cut both dies at the same time.
I know, this is really fun.
All right, so we're going to start with the square, and I just want to show you really quick, I'm going to use my ruler here, how to measure for your width of fabric strip.
Right.
So we recommend that you just measure the width of your shape and then add 1/4 of an inch to either side. Right. So that's how you're going to, then you just cut your width of fabric strip to that measurement. Okay, and so what I've got, this is the block that we're putting together, right?
We're going to finish that one off.
Okay, and for the squares we need the pink and the white fabric.
Right.
And so I've got the 2 strips right here, and so this will be 4 layers.
Right.
Which will give us all the block or the squares that we need.
Perfect. And we could go up to 6 with a Go die, but we're going to do the 4 now because that's what we need for our project.
That's right. And so I'll put my mat on this one. I'm just going to roll up my fabric. I am going to show you a quick trick as soon as I run this through as well with cutting. And then this is our half square triangle.
Right. And that's going to be the other part of the block.
And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to have, we cut our width of fabric strips. We've got them on the lengthwise grains so they run this way through the cutter.
Great tip. Always remember that. Yeah.
And the 2-tone foam makes it really easy to see, right, where to layer your fabric. And so I'm going to just put that on my die and then set it on the cutter. And I'm just rolling this excess fabric up next to the die.
You just want to be careful that you've got that all kind of organized there.
Right, and you don't want to have that under your die.
It's kind of like a die race. You get to see which one's going to make it through the end first.
Okay, so here we go.
Okay. Perfect. This is great. What a great time-saving tip.
Right. So there we go. And then, okay.
That's another thing. Lynn just slid that mat off, and that's a really great tip too, because sliding that off, if you've built up some static electricity, which is really normal to happen, then you're not going to be pulling your fabric, part of it up onto your mat and leaving part of it on the die, and it's going to keep it right together for you.
Right, it makes it so much easier that way. And so I just wanted to show you, so there, look at the very little bit of fabric waste that I had. All I'm going to do then is just scoop my fabric up right over my shapes, because I already have that with the fabric strip measured, so then I can just go back and cut that again. Right.
Perfect.
So, all right, so let's move to the sewing. I'll get your squares and everything for you.
For me.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right, so I'm going to give you those.
Okay. So we're going to get started with these. We've got our 2 pink and our 2 white. And I'm going to match those up, and they are absolutely perfect because we cut them on our die. We're ready to go ahead. Now all of our shapes with our AccuQuilt dies are calculated with a standard 1/4 inch quilting seam allowance. So we're ready to just come on in here and go ahead and get that sewed. And really, if you do all your cutting ahead, you can sit here and chain piece those together and have this done really in very little time. And Lynn, if you want to hand me those half squares, I'm just going to go ahead and keep going with those.
There you go.
And these The good thing about these are they've got this dog-eared corner. We engineer them with this cut off so that when we are done sewing it, not only is it going to give us a guideline as to where to sew with our 1/4 inch, but when we have it together and press it, you're going to see we don't have any trimming to do at all, and that's a great time savings. Boy, you get spoiled with not having to do that really quickly.
It's also nice if you're chain piecing your square ahead of your triangle that it becomes a jumper square, so that you
don't have to worry about getting that tip down in the end. So super. So I'm going to just pop these apart here. I'm going to use my little cutter on the edge. Now I'm going to press these to the dark side. Lynn's a press open girl, but I'm a press to the dark side. So I'm going to go ahead, set that really quickly, and fold it up towards the dark.
Okay, and it's great to follow the directions in your pattern. That most patterns will instruct you if it's important to press it one way or the other.
And sometimes there is a reason, so you do want to do that. I know I'm guilty of sometimes not reading my pattern, so that's always. And another thing that I always like to do, and I think is a great tip too, is to always do a test block.
Yes.
Cut one block first, sew it together, and that'll help the whole project go together a little bit more smoothly for you. So let's go ahead and get this 4-patch together because I'm excited to show you how to do that.
Okay.
So we're going to want this laid out so that our pinks are opposite corners, our whites are opposite corners. Because we've pressed to the dark, that means that these are going to almost do a little lock together at that point. So when you put them together, you're going to be able to pull that back and see that you've got those fabrics right kissing up next to each other, if you will.
And that actually holds the seam together better as well.
It will.
I'm going to go ahead and press this for you.
That would be awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
While you're doing that.
While I sew. And I do to keep my finger on that little point just to help make sure that everything stays together. I tend to pin more than some quilters, but you really don't need to with this. Okay, so we've got that, and here we've got this now.
Yes. Oh, and look at that. It's perfect.
It's absolutely perfect. And you know what? Making the perfect 4-patch isn't always as easy as you think. But having that perfect cut, you're going to have those great points. So we've got that all pressed out. So we've got this top unit put together. We're going to go ahead then and lay this one out. So this one's going to match up like this. So let's go ahead, flip this over, and sew these 2 pieces together.
So this is really a great beginner quilt.
It would be a really good one. And it looks like, because of the mirroring and the design, it's going to look like it's a really complicated pattern.
Right, right.
And that's what we always want when we're getting started. We want to do something that's quick and easy and looks like it took a long time.
Right, and that's a little bit more interesting than just sewing squares together.
Absolutely. Okay. And again, we're going to go in and go ahead and press. Now I know that we pressed towards the little squares on the other piece. And again, I'm going to mirror that because I again want those perfect points in the center, and I want to be able to have that match up really well. So let me give that a little press. Now I want to make sure I've got this laid out right. So I'm going to go ahead and double check myself that I've got my pattern, I've got my squares laid out. That's usually what Lynn does for me when we're filming together, is make sure that I have my squares facing the right way.
That's another good reason to do a test block, because then you can have it here while you're...
And I will keep my test block right there with me as I'm assembling, just so that I don't get confused or don't get carried away, maybe is a good way of putting it, while I'm sewing, and forget what I'm doing, because then we have to unsew, and that doesn't save anybody any time. Again, I'm kind of keeping my finger on that little point because I just want to make sure that I get that perfect point down there.
This quilt also would lend itself to some really fun patterns to do with the quilting after you've got
It
the
really
top
would.
put together.
And you could do a great, I mean, you could do it seasonally with seasonal fabrics. You could really have a lot of fun with it. Okay.
There we go.
There we go. So I could press that out, but again, we've got our great point there in the center, and we've got another one there, and you get that secondary pattern. Then as you lay them all out, you're going to see the little squares all going in that diagonal.
That is just great.